Hi, John here, and today we're looking at Super Dungeon Explorer. This particular edition is the classic version of the base game, in which a band of heroes ventures into a dungeon filled with various monsters, creatures, be they dragons, kobolds, or all sorts. In this particular set, most of the enemies are primarily based on kobolds and worms. Now, the objective of the game is to destroy these spawning points that will be scattered throughout the dungeon. Heroes can also loot treasure chests to gain some pretty sweet epic gear. And depending on what difficulty of the game, you'll either encounter the mini bosses or even the dungeon boss itself. In this game, you can come across these kobold ogres as the mini bosses, and the major boss being Starfire the dragon. As I said earlier, the players will be gathering loot in order to gear up their heroes. This is in the form of 2 loot decks. One of the cool things about the Super Dungeon Explorer game is that the way that they've done the items is pretty cool, as you can have the different areas of the character kitted out, which is nicely color-coded to make it really easy to tell where the various items will go on the character card. The character card itself is also done in quite a neat way, in which various colored dice will actually increase your character's stats and fighting ability, also their survivability. So here we can see 3 different colors of the dice, the blue representing the sort of the starter type setup, the basic gear that the heroes enter the dungeon with. As you can see, there's a number of blank sides, 1 side stars, and also it only has the 2 as the max number of stars that you can actually roll on this dice. That improves, as you can see with the red, goes up to 3, also reducing one of the blank sides. And lastly, with the green dice, it goes up to 4, and there's no longer any blank sides. Also, as extra benefit is you've got the heart and the potion on the 1 dice. Now, how the hearts and the potions work is, if you're successful in a combat and you roll up some hearts or potions, you can actually give yourself back lost health, used potion, or even a party member that may have lost health or used their potion in an earlier turn, you can actually start restoring those, which is a cool effect, and it's very similar to a number of arcade games. Now, there's a number of heroes in the set that the players can actually pick from, not limited to these, but that's just some examples. Classic character classes such as Rogue and Paladins, and even one of the newer favourites is the Druid class, in which it's got the shape-shifting ability. It can actually turn into an angry bear, which is pretty cool, and that does modify the character's stats. Most notably, going from blue attack dice straight to red. Likewise, gives himself an extra red dice of armor, while the other stats actually don't change. You'll also notice that the characters have got what looks like little movement pads, which tells you how far the characters can move each turn, and there's a little action button which represents how many actions the particular character can use. Now, as we mentioned earlier, as you're gearing up your characters, you can actually get different items that can affect your characters in other ways, not just stats. So you may increase it by adding an extra action button, which can allow you to do extra attack, maybe even help buff some of your allies. In the case of the Paladin, it has this neat ability called Iron Halo, which gives you an aura that actually helps your teammates by giving them +1 in their armor stat. So it's an extra blue dice that they wouldn't otherwise have, which makes your party survive much more effectively than otherwise. Now we're just going to have a little bit of a look through some of the various characters and creatures in which the players will actually encounter. So here we have some of the kobolds, as mentioned earlier: gougers, knuckleheads, flingers, iron scales, the dragon priests. Now these guys are all generated out from Kobold Warren's spawning points. It's got a list of the characters here that relate to it. Also has some additional effects shown on the card. Unlike the monsters or the heroes, spawn points generally only have health and armor shown on, as they usually do not attack the heroes. Other options in the base set also includes hatchlings, whelps and wormlings, which are spawned from their corresponding egg clutch. Again, it tells you clearly on the card what creatures relate to the spawning points. Now when playing various sized games, you may actually opt not to use some of the spawning points, or you might even want to add in some of the additional add-on packs, some of which will be covered in future videos. Now, as we mentioned earlier, the dungeon finale can sometimes be a mini-boss, or you may encounter a few of these mini-bosses in a larger game, with the finale being the major boss, in this case, Starfire the Dragon. As you can see, these guys have got much higher stats. They're rolling a huge amount of dice, and as you can see, Starfire himself actually rolls all 3 coloured dice, which could be quite devastating. And it also means that his survivability is incredibly high, not to mention the 8 health. So this basically gives you quite a good starting point for getting into the game. Had been a number of people talking about, a lot of kobolds in the set, but you can quite easily expand upon the game with picking up one of the warbands, which are now quite commonly available in the range, and also picking up additional spawning points of a particular kind that you may feel appeals more to you. Now, we'll just have a little bit of a look at one of the other things which has changed. With the addition of the Forgotten King game, which we'll be covering again in a future video, an upgrade deck has actually been made available, which includes pretty much everything that had been made in the classic range. So as you can see, it's more clearly shown what stats the characters will attack and defend from. It also shows you a crystal affinity that the character has. Now, as you can see, these are all the familiar characters that we were looking through earlier. Even the spawning point has the new shield symbol there, indicating the defense. There's been a little bit of revision here to the ways in which the subtext has been written, which makes it just that little bit easier to follow what the cards do. And also, it's got a nice listing here of what the little subtexts mean. So in this case it tells you about what it means to be part of the mobs, what mob mentality means, and it also shows you how that affinity works. So it's all really neat little additions that they've made to the base game, and it's really neat to see that they have updated the cards so that instead of you needing to go out and buy a new base game to keep up to date with changes or where it is, you can actually just pick up the upgrade deck and you can be away with the newest edition. Some of the other things that they've added in as well is they've brought back King Starfire, which is quite hard to find now because it was originally metal cast miniature, I believe. Booty Biter has been updated, and all the classic heroes have got their cards updated too. For example, Deeproot Druid, it shows you here, they can make a melee attack using strength, you can make a ranged will attack from 6 away. Also updated symbols, make it clearer that inflicts poison immunity, and a number of other symbols just to help you understand the cards with just a glance that much more easier. As you can see, all of the different heroes have also received the same similar style updates. And also, they've revised it with arcade mode, which again we'll be covering more about this when we're talking with the Forgotten King base game and what that actually means. Just in short, it gives you a way in which you do not have to have a player specifically playing as the console. Instead, you can have the enemies, in a sense, automated, much like an arcade game, where they'll generally target players in which the game as such would deem to be the most threatening. As you can see, all of the big bosses has also been updated to include the arcade mode, which is very neat. Now, there are specific loots also that have been brought up to speed with the new style of Forgotten King, including the mini-boss, that's the Kobold Ogres Club, specific Starfire items, now one of the easiest ways to customize your game and to modify it with pretty little cost is to pick up some of the small mini boss packs or even hero packs, many of which now contain, if you get the version 2 of the box, the updated characters, which also includes arcade mode cards, hero cards, and an item to further customize your games. Now these can be quite a fun way to modify your game by throwing at your players some new mini-bosses to encounter once they've destroyed those spawn points. Now again, these can be in classic mode or arcade mode, or if you do not want to include them as console options, you can simply chuck them in as extra heroes for your players to choose from. So yeah, that's basically the rundown of the classic base game, as well as some of the updates that are now available with version 2. Again, These are available on the Soda Pop Miniatures webpage, so do check it out, especially in holiday season. So you might be able to pick up some cool Christmas presents to people that you know that may be into tabletop miniatures, or may not have even heard of this game, but may have played similar. Cool. Hope you enjoyed the video, and catch you next time. God bless. Bye.